Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. So today, as agreed upon, I would like us to look a little bit on unit tests. So basically testing in general, and I would like us to talk about unit testing and of course integration testing, and we'll try to of course cover as much of these topics as possible in this series, and of course also try to draw like a of course like a clear difference between both. So what I would like us to do more or less would be try to isolate some different aspects of our app and then individually test these logics, and those will of course what will be what will comprise our unit tests. And then integration tests will be us trying to like test like a complete flows, which could, for example, be say the complete login flow for a user. We would like to go, so say basically from when we process the incoming request till when we actually try to verify the user credentials and then log them in general. So it also means it has to do with, of course, database connection, actual database connection, because um, with the integration test, we try as much as possible to make sure that the test resembles or have some really good semblance of what the actual product would look like in the end. Okay, without further ado, I think we should just jump right in and start writing some code. So I already cleaned up the code a little bit. So if you look here, for example, I've moved things around. For example, the whole creation of our get more or less like database connection pool, I've moved this into like a separate function. It's also really pretty straightforward. I simply just copied the whole code and brought it over here. It's very straightforward. And so, but what I would like us to do would be to go to the DB, and I think this is the most obvious one we can actually test out. So let's just write the test, because I would like us to actually have this within the file that we would try to test. So for example, if we wanted to test setup for our DB, I think it makes a lot of sense that we actually have this within this file more or less, just so that we'll have the test just close to the logic as much as possible. So let's not waste so much of our time. I'm just going to go ahead and start writing the tests. Um, so I can actually come here and define a module, and I can call this maybe DB test, for example. So within here, I'll try to define every possible test we would need to write for our DB module. Again, I will try to again understand more or less that unit testing really involves like isolating an aspect of our code and then just testing this singular unit irrespective of whatever dependencies it might have. Okay, but I would like this test of course to be as much more involved as possible, and that's really why I'm going to take a slightly different approach. So I'm going to create a function here, and I'll call this I can call this maybe tests user insert. So this is going to help us more or less test the insert logic that we have written up here, just to see if it actually behaves the way we expect it to behave. And so of course I would need to annotate this function. It's gonna, of course, it's async, so I will need to annotate it, of course, just so we because I'm going to use Actix test. So Actix would be getting this from Actix Web, and then I need the tests. And that's really all the annotation we need from here. Now we can actually come in here and start writing our code. So the first thing I would like to do here would be to bring in .env. So I can say .m.ok. Um, okay, because we would be working with environment variables. So I want us to be able to have access to those environment variables when we need them. And maybe what I might also want to do down here would be to create a function that's basically going to help me establish more or less a DB connection to our database. So I'm just going to call it maybe async function, and I can call it DB con, or maybe I'll call it DB pool, doesn't really matter. And so it's gonna give us back a PG pool, this one, and it's really gonna be pretty straightforward. So I can actually Well, I can also type it, it doesn't really matter. So I can call this db con string. So this will be our connection string, and I would like to get this, of course, as an environment variable. So let me see why I don't get IntelliSense. Okay, now I have IntelliSense. And just so I can get rid of this error we have here, I can already define what would be returning back, which would be our PG pool options, this one. So I can say PG options dot new. So this is what we would like to return back. And now I can also maybe focus on this error and see why we are getting this error over here. Okay, of course, this should be var. So now I'm gonna provide the value. So I think we named it database connection string. So something like this. And I can add an expect and add some message, maybe say again, the database connection string was not set, something like this. So we have access to our connection string, and now what we can simply do is to try to establish a connection here. So I can come on, I can say max connections, and here I'm gonna make it 5, doesn't really matter. And now I call the connect function. And of course, I pass a reference our db con string, the one we defined above. And now, of course, I await and handle any error. I'm simply just going to call unwrap. And now this should be able to give us our database connection pool. So I can now come back into the function that we already started to write up here. And then I can define a variable. I can call this let pool. I simply call this function. And again, I await, and then I'll have my connection to the database. So now I would like to create the user that I would like to insert. Um, okay, user model. So I need to provide the information. So first name, I can do maybe string dot from. I'll give it a value. I'm simply just going to copy this and then just repeat it everywhere. So first name, I can say Tony. Last name, I can say 18, for example. And now I can say email. I drop this again. And I can say Tony.18 at example.com, for example. I think this is already good enough. And now, of course, I need password. Again, I'm gonna add this way. I can say some boring password like this, doesn't really matter so much. And now the ID, of course, I can do exactly the same. And I can simply say some boring ID, something like this, and now this should be fine. Okay, so we now have close this up. We now have our user. So now all we actually have to do is to call to start running our tests, do our insertions, do our verifications, and then that should be fine. So I can simply call the insert method. Maybe here I add some message. I can say test insert and get, because I would like to do this together in one fell swoop. Okay, so now I can come down here and say users, say users, this one, okay, and I say insert, and now I pass my user, and maybe I actually, what I can do here would be to maybe define a variable. I can call, because of the way we structured our insert, I can say let ID, and I simply just copy this. And because we'll use this for verification purposes. So we have our ID, and now I can pass it in here. So we can do a bool, of course. And no, actually, if that's the case, maybe because this might expect a string literal. So now I can actually maybe do it like this. Should still be fine, I guess. Okay, and now of course I need to await, because this should be This should be an async function, and then I will handle the error this way. So now our insert should be fine. So now what we can do next would be to try to match the user we get back. So I can simply say let user. I'm still gonna call it user and let it overshadow the one we created before. Doesn't really matter. So I can now match users. I'm gonna maybe call get. That's why I said I would like to do an insert and a get. I test them both together. So I insert and then I do a get and try to compare what I get back. Okay, so I pass an ID, and of course I need to pass a pool as well. And so here I would like to wait, and let's see if everything okay. We now have to provide our matching arms, the two arms. So okay, so I'm going to take care of the okay arm first. So if this is okay and we have a user, we like to return this user, and then we have our user model. But if we get an error, and what we can actually do, in this case, I don't want this to crash the program, but I want this to be able to give us a result that we can verify, and of course maybe be able to tell if we actually had an error or not. So I would still like this to return a user model like this. I don't want to add the values yet. I'll still like this to return a user model like this, and to do that I would like to go to the definition and add a new implementation for our user model. And you might have already guessed, I would like to add of course the default implementation for our user model. So I can import default for user model, and then of course I add the function. The function is simply just going to return my user model for me. So first name, I'm going to say string.new new. Again, I'm just going to copy this because I will repeat this several times. So first name, last name, email, password, and then ID. Okay, and now we have our default implementation. So I can actually come in here and say user model, and I call the default method, and this should still be fine. Because the point is I want that the result will get back, that we can still be able to verify this. So at this point, the ID is simply just going to be an empty string. So it will be easier for us to verify than just returning an error. Okay, this is expecting a string. I can simply do a toString, and this should be fine. Okay, so we've done an insert and now we've done a get. So if we are able to insert this successfully, then it means when we run this, when we do this get, we should be able to also retrieve this user back one more time. So what it means is that I can actually come down here and do an assert. I can do an assert equal, and then I try to compare the ID of the user that was inserted, and of course the ID will define that both. So I can say user ID and then ID. So this should be able to do the assertion for us. Okay, let's proceed. So now what I would also like to do is to test get user by email. We actually had this function here, but I don't think we ever used it. So we can actually still test it here, doesn't really matter. So I can come down here, and it's going to really be pretty straightforward because I might as well just copy what we have here and bring it down here. And of course, I replace this with get by email. And then what I can simply do is to, because it's expecting an email, I can simply just pass the user. We have a user that's email. So, but what it means is that if we run this test in sequence, it means it should this, for example, fail. If the insert fails, then of course, this would fail because this part, and then this part would then overwrite our user with the default values, and this would also fail because this becomes an empty string. So that's also one way we can actually test if the test actually ran sequentially and if everything behaved the way we expected them to. So again, we can actually do something pretty straightforward like we did here. And again, we are of course overwriting this again. So if this happens again, we are doing an overwrite. So, but again, we can actually do this. For example, we can do our assert one more time, and we can also maybe even change it up to test for email. Doesn't really matter. But this, I think, this should be sufficient, and it's really that simple. So maybe the last thing I would like us to do here would be we test delete use or something like this. Again, it's also going to look exactly like what we have before. I'm just going to actually copy this one more time, this user, and actually paste it here. But now I replace this with delete. Again, this should, so here actually we can do something a little bit different. Maybe what I can actually do here is to not match this maybe, and I can call this results, for example. And then what I can actually do is, of course, at this point, I can unwrap to handle any error. Of course, I can get rid of match and we get our results. So, but now what I can actually do after deletion is to assert if the number of rows affected was actually equal to 1. It's really as simple as that. So I can do assert equal, and now I do results that rows affected and then 1. So what this means is that I'm expecting that when we do a delete, of course, I don't expect it to delete more than one items or not up to one item. So it should delete exactly just one item from the database. That's really the plan I have here. So with this part completed, of course, the remaining things, I think you can of course do this on your own. Doesn't shouldn't really be that difficult. And of course, again, if you run into difficulties, feel free to leave me a question. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And but anyways, I think this should do it for the test we need to write right now for our DB. And or you can also borrow a leaf from what we did here already, and then look around and see some of the other functions we have defined here that you can write the test for. And but other than that, we're going to go ahead and run the test to test to see everything works the way we expected. And then we're going to go ahead and write the test for our handlers. We're actually going to go and write the actual integration test that's going to test the complete flow, for example, our login procedure. And actually, to make it interesting, what we can actually do is to write a test, an integration test that basically tests the login, for example, and then when a user logs in, he should get back an auth token, and then we'll take this token that was gotten back and maybe use it to make an additional request and see if actually everything goes through. And that would be like one really cool way to actually have a fully functioning integration test. So if you look right here, of course, you can see that all our tests actually passed, and which is also a good news. So that's also to show that what we did so far actually we are moving in the right direction. So anyways, to make it actually more interesting, let's go ahead and write like a full-fledged integration test that's going to test our whole flow. And like I said, we'll test the login functionality. And if everything goes well, we should be proud of ourselves that of course now this actually behaves the way we'd expect it to. So let's move over and actually start doing the integration testing. So let me create a module here, and I can call this mod tests. So inside this module, I'm going to write all the tests I would want to write for our handlers. And I'm just going to start quite simply. And to do that, I'm just going to create again, just like we did before. Maybe I would look for this DB guy and just copy this. I don't want to type it again. And come back here. So I annotate this before I even write my function. So async function, and I can call this maybe test. Let me pull up the main on this side so I see what I can test. So if you come down here, we actually have this um, loan handler here, and I'm maybe just gonna change it to, I'll just rename it and call it index, and I can say maybe something like server is live, and so that I can come in here and change this to index. Okay. And now what I can simply do is my function, I can now call it test index. So I'm just going to use this function to basically check if our server is alive. That's really the idea here. It's really going to be pretty straightforward. And to do that, of course, I would like to more or less do what we would do when we are starting a server, something quite similar. But of course, with Actix, you have the option, you are provided with an actual init service that more or less helps you to do something similar to what we have here on the right. And I can actually say let app. So this is going to come from tests, and I can say init service like this. As you can see, this comes from Actix tests. And then in here, of course, I would like to define my app. So I can maybe bring that into a new line, of course, close this up. So in here, I need to provide an app. So here again, just like we would with Actix Web, I can now say app.new. And now I need to pass all the other things I would like to. So let's just say I'm creating a simple test server. I'm just going to use to test our index handler, and it's quite simple. If I scroll up, if I come over here, this is going at /health. I'm just going to copy that actually, or maybe just even show you. I'm just going to copy the whole thing and replace this part with it. And as simple as this. And of course, again, I need to bring in web in here. And of course, this is not imported, so I can say use index. So this should come on, help me out here. Anyways, I'm just gonna say use super. I'm just gonna import the whole thing. So this is gonna take care of this import for us. So anyways, now I have access to my app, and of course it returns a future. So again, we await, and now we get our service back. So with our service now, I can actually make a simple request at this endpoint to see what we get back. So now I can say let's request, for example, and I can say test.test request. Come on. And I use the test request, and I say, of course, is a get method. So I say get, and now I can provide the URI. Come on. Seriously. That's URI. Oh, come on. That's URI. And of course, I provide the path. So this is going as /health. And of course, apart from the path, would of course need to provide more or less the handler itself. So to keep it simple, maybe I'm just going to say .uri, and now I say to request like this. I don't know what is wrong with me today. I can't type quite well. And now, so I define a response. So the response is going to be also from tests. There is a method called call service, which is this one here. And I simply need to provide a reference to our app and the request that I've created. And that's mostly it. Of course, again, it's going to return a future. So I await it and close this up. So now we get our response. So with our response, what we can now do is maybe do some simple assertions. So I can say assert, and what I might want to assert would be, let's say, our status. So I can say status, and I can say that is success. And so the point is that we would like to make a simple start up a simple service, of course, with the help of this test init service. And then for now, it's just going to have a simple, just one endpoint, which of course is also what we have over here. And then we try to make a request to this URL, and then we validate the response we get back. As simple as that. So now I can again say cargo test, and then just to see what happens. Now the test is complete, and then of course if you look here, this is the test we ran, which is of course this one here. And then you also see that it actually succeeded. So again, I'm just going to collapse it. And now I would like us to do a much more interesting test. We'll test a couple of things. I want us to test like a whole flow, something that's just going to more or less touch so many aspects of our app just to be sure things are working. And what I would like us to do more or less would be to test, say, um, the login endpoint, for example. So I would like us to be able to log in, retrieve a token, then use the token and then make an authenticated request and then see if everything actually works out. That's really, I think if we achieve this, you should then be able to, of course, run any form of test you would want in the future. It should cover everything more or less. Okay. So now I can come down here again. I'm just going to copy what we have here because I'm lazy to type. Okay, and then I paste this in here. And of course, I need to change the name of the function. So now it's going to be test login. And now in here, let's actually start defining what we want to more or less be. Of course, it has to look similar to what we have over here. So I'm actually going to just to not waste our time, I'm really going to copy a lot of things in here because again, I don't want to repeat myself. So I'm just going to copy everything you see here and bring it down here. Come on, I'm bringing it down here. So we have our pool now. And so what I would like to do is, because I would like to do exactly what we had over here. So again, I'm just gonna maybe copy all of this again and come down here and dump everything and indent that. And okay, and now the next thing, of course, because I want us to have something that is quite similar to what we had. Again, that is of course the concept of mocking if you would want to abstract some logic. But for now, I really want this login to be like a full integration test where we test the whole flow, where user logs in, retrieves a token, and then use the token to proceed to actually make an authenticated request to our server. That's what I really want us to have over here. Okay, and just also maybe gonna copy this one. Well, I'm copying all of this because if you remember, we have over here our defined app state, as you can see, and our app state needs all of this to actually be predefined. So that's why I have really no choice, more or less, than to copy or more or less repeat what we have over here, just so it would match. That's really what I'm doing. Okay, so now I have this, and of course I need my client, so I'm just going to copy this. And of course, now we are making reference to NATs, which is also means to run this test. I would also need to have NATs running on the site. Okay, so we missed the URL. I'm just going to put that, it's fine. Okay, and now it should be fine. So actually I didn't use this, so I'm going to get rid of it. And clients was never used actually, so I'm also going to get rid of it. What else? So we have our data, and then I think that's fine. So now we have most of all we need. So what I need to now do now is to just go ahead and define our services. Okay, so I'm just going to copy what we have over here again. So this would be our app. What is the error? Why do we have an error? Of course, I need to close this up. That's fine. I actually think we don't need this subscriber. Let me get rid of it first. And I don't think we need that actually. And then let me try to see what this error is. Did I miss a closing? I think I missed a curly brace actually. Oh, my bad. And so, okay. So now we have our app, but now of course it's not something simple. It's really going to be as close to what we have here as possible. So I might even just dump all of this here. It doesn't even matter. So again, I'm just going to copy this and put it in here. Okay. And now we have our app more or less, but of course now I would like to add these services we would want to test. So I would like us to test our public service because this contains the login that we would need the user to do. So there is login, and then also we have the user's service. I'm just also going to put that down here. So if you remember, if I go to this service, it's at /public, and then I have login and register. And then of course, if I go to this service, get users, it's at /user, and then I have my add users, get user, whatever. So this is what I would like the user to do. Login, verify your login, and then of course, make some requests on servers. Pretty straightforward. Okay. So now we have our app defined. I would like us to actually make a request to log in and then see what we get back. So I can define a payload. So my payload, I'm just gonna actually write a raw string here. So pretty straightforward like this. Of course I need to close this up again. And maybe I make this as bytes. Come on. Okay, let me define this first and then we can of course proceed. Okay, so in here, I would like to define our JSON payload. So, so the payload, of course, would be quite straightforward. So in here, I'm just going to have my password. And here, I'm just going to add something random. Doesn't really matter. And I have email. And of course, here I need to provide an actual email that you already signed up in the past. So example.com. And so I need to change this to as common bytes. Yes, I want this to be a slice of bytes more or less. And now I want to use this payload to now actually make a request our login endpoint. So now here I can say test. As you can see here, that is almost like we are duplicating a lot of things in here. But the point again, like we said, is we would want to have a test as close to possible as what we actually have over here, which is why we are doing this integration test. Okay, so now we have everything set up, and now I would like to actually make the request. So I can now say test login, I can now say test let's requests. Again, I need to define my request. So again, it's going to be pretty straightforward. I say test and test requests. And then in here, it's going to be a post again, if you remember. So I provide the URI again, like we did before. So this is going to be going to public, if you remember, /login. So this will be the URI. And I would like to, what is the one am I not getting IntelliSense anymore? Public.login, Tony. And now I can say insert, what is going on? Okay, so I do dot ins and common insert. Why am I not getting IntelliSense anymore? Of course, common insert header. And then within the header, I would like to maybe just, I would like to provide content JSON. So I simply need to bring in content type. Yes, content type. And now I can say JSON. Okay. And with this content type, what is now I can actually set my payload. What is going on? I really have no clue why I'm not getting IntelliSense anymore. Okay, of course, dot set payload, and now provide my payload. And what is I want to do now, I can simply say to request. And that would actually be our request. And now, of course, we have to have our response. So I can say let's response. So response would be test. We now actually get to call the service. So we say test.call service. And then again, I provide a reference to our app, and of course pass the requests, and again it's going to be async, so I await it. And so now we have our service response. So now what we can actually do now is to first, now what I want to do would be to assert the status code that we got back. So I can say resp.status, of course that is success, it has to be successful. And okay, and maybe to also show you if actually this is looking like it's maybe because when we log in, we're supposed to get a token back. I can say let's body to actually show you the content of the body. Because if I maybe let me close this one up and now open up our terminal. So let me clear this just to show you so you have an idea. So I come over here and start our NAT server again, and then you will come over here and then I say cargo run, and now our server is up. Let's give it a few seconds. So it's up, as you can see. So I collapse it, and now I go back to our HTTP file, which is over here, and then I have our login down here. So we already have this user, and now if I try to log in, as you can see, we actually get a token back. That's what we already did in the past. So this is what I'm trying to leverage more or less right now, just to actually see if everything is working as expected. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna stop this server and maybe stop this as well. We don't need this anymore. And then I close this up. So the response is actually what I would like us to verify, just to see if everything is working as expected. So now I can say let body, and I do again tests. There is a read body function, and now of course I pass my response. And but the thing is that it also takes ownership of these variables, so I can't have access to this more or less once I read the body. Okay, and I don't know why this keeps opening. And now I have the body. In this case, this body is simply just going to be a string. It's going to be our token. And maybe what we can actually do is do a print line. So I can see some like token ray from server, something like this. And then of course pass my token, and of course this is a byte, so I can just go ahead and pass it as is, and I can actually pass it right. Should be able to pass it like this. I should be able to pass it like this. It should be fine. Okay, so what is this going to do again is just going to log in, and if everything goes well, it should be able to return a token for us. So again, let me confirm if this email is correct. I'm just going to copy the entire string and come back to main, and then over here, I think I made a mistake in here actually. Should have been something like this. So now I can make my run my test again just to see if everything works as should. So I say cargo test. Let's give that a few seconds. So we are actually getting an error, and if we look through, for example, this is where the error is coming from at 147. No connection could. Of course, our NAT server is of course not up because again, if you remember, it's part of what we are putting in our state. So this point actually errors out. I think that's line 147. That is what we see down here. So I'm just gonna split this and then just start my NAT server one more time. And now the server is up. Okay, let's run the test one more time. Scroll down and now you see it passes, the three of them passes, but actually we don't see this gets printed out. So one trick I also normally do just to be sure would be I add an assert equal here. I simply just add an empty string here because of course and it's not going to be equal to an empty string, but I try to assert with an empty string. And now I can use from UTF-8, I think I get it from string, and then from UTF-8, and then I pass a reference to my body like this. And of course I need to handle an error, but I'm just going to unwrap for now. And so what I do now is try to actually more or less compare this body with this empty string. Of course that's not going to be exactly the same. It's going to error out, but I want to see actually this. So again, let me restart this and run the server one more time. Okay, now you see it actually ran and failed, but if I scroll up, I will actually see what I really want to see. So you're trying to compare this token with this. Of course, it's not the same, so it errors out. That's also fine. So, but that's really what I wanted to see. So I'm just going to collapse this one more time. So now we are logging in successfully and we are getting the token. That's really great. So, but what can we actually use this token for? What can we really use it for? So what we can use it for maybe is to, maybe I can come here and I say we would like to fetch the users on the database, something like this. Again, I'm going to create a new request again. So say let's request is going to shadow the one we have above, but that's also totally fine. I'm just going to copy all of this because I'm lazy to type today. The only thing, of course, is now I need to update the URL. So this is going to slash auth slash user and slash users slash users. So this is the endpoint that's going to fetch us all the users in the database. Okay, and of course, I'm not setting any payload, and it's going to be a get. Is a getter, and of course is not a post. So now again I need to handle the response like we're already doing here. So I'm just going to copy the response again. I'm just going to shadow it one more time. So this would be our response. And now with our response, what we can actually do now is um, so, but before that, of course, I would like to actually add this token to this request. Otherwise, if we run it now, it's really going to fail because, okay, I can also show you that just so you see actually that what we are doing is behaving the way we expect it. So maybe what I can now do is I can assert, I'll try to assert, for example, that this response is a success, something like this. And then we'll see if that was actually a success. And so let's bring this up one more time. Our NAT server is still up, and then I wipe the screen and run the test one more time. So I've run the test and now I actually get a failure back. And if I actually look through what I get, you see here the error we get from the server says authorization header was not present in request. And to also actually just confirm to you where this is coming from, I'm just going to copy this, put it in here, and we already see somewhere here. So again, this is our auth middleware. As you can also see from up here, this is our auth middleware. And because we don't have this authorization token, it's erroring out like this, exactly how we expect it to. So this again can already be a test. If you want, actually, let's make it a test. So here I can say this should not be the case, and I can say fetch users without auth token. Again, just to show you this already a test. And anyways, I'm just gonna duplicate this again and then come down here. And now this would be fetch users with auth token. Okay. And now what we really simply need to do is I'll come to this insert header, and now I can simply add a tuple more or less. So I want to add authorization. I hope I spelled that well. And then in here, I would like to, of course, pass my token more or less. And what I can actually already do, there are a couple of things we can do also just to show you. Maybe I actually just remove this part, it's no longer necessary actually. And what we can actually do is I can add an assert here just to actually verify. And maybe I do an assert equal to verify actually what we get back, and I would like to check if so now pretty straightforward. I'll try to decode this token the way we would for an actual request. So this should come from here, yes. And now here I can now pass this guy. I think I deleted it, that's also fine. String, and now I do from UTF-8, and I pass a reference to body, for example, and I unwrap, and of course I close this up. And what is it? Cannot find the code in this scope. I thought I imported this. Okay, so let's try that one more time. So what's okay? Let's say the code. Go down to where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Come on. Okay, should be this one. Okay, so now this is actually us decoding the token. And what I would like to do now is to decode the token we'll get back and see if it's also, of course, what we want it to be. As simple as that. Anyways, I'm just again going to copy this part. Actually, I would like to copy this part. And in here, I'm going to add my my bearer token. So I say bearer, I give a space, and then over here, of course, I need to provide a placeholder like this. And then in here, I pass my, I'm going to close this part, sorry. I pass this. So now I'm actually taking the body we got from here, which is this one, and then I'm passing it here as our token, of course, to the next request. And now this should of course be an authenticated request. And now if we do an assertion, for example, our results should be successful. That's really what we want to do. So we're testing a lot of things at the same time. So again, remember right here, we are already decoding the token we get back and trying to make sure that this is actually valid. Okay, this is can also be a completely separate test. It doesn't really matter, but now I'm actually trying to be as fast as possible because I don't want us to, this is already getting longer than I expected. Anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and run the test now, and then we see what we get back. So if you look here, you will actually see all our tests passed, and but if you look here, you actually see all our tests passed. And but of course, yeah, I'm just gonna draw the curtain here for our tests, and I'm just gonna let you do the rest yourselves. I actually realized that we had no auth here, um so I of course just had to get rid of that anyways. But yeah, that was all I needed to show you with tests, as it pertains to unit tests, and of course integration tests. So please, of course, again, like I said, feel free to watch at your own pace. And yeah, if anything is not clear, I would be happy to actually get back to you, answer your questions, and of course help you in any way I can. So, regarding, of course, the last things we want to talk about here, I actually just thought a little bit, and I think it would actually make more sense if we devote a little more time to this. And most of what we have here, we've already covered, of course, apart from WebAssembly, and we've already done a little bit about middlewares. So what I would really want to do is to just so this video doesn't get as long, unnecessarily long, I'm just going to move this information here and bring them down here, so that we'll talk about it here because we can already check out most of these things here. So but I would like to really talk to you about these things in details, because I really think this is really really important, and I don't want to squeeze this in within the 5 minutes video. That's not going to really do justice to these topics. So bear with me. Of course, in our next two videos, more or less, we'll talk about this. So we'll talk about deployment in our next video, and afterwards I would take my time and really really go into details in these topics. Again, like I said, we've already checked out like three of them, so it's just going to be these two, and again these two here. I think we really need to make our time for this, so bear with me. Of course, in our next two videos we would wrap this up, and I because I try to as much as possible to give you like valuable content, not just for the sake of making the content in the first place. Anyway, guys, that's really all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being patient with me and being part of the journey until now. Again, of course, if you're new, you know what to do. Please just go ahead and subscribe. And of course, if you have questions, if you have topics you would want me to cover in the future, please go ahead and let me know. I always note these things down, and I will take care of them in due time. Anyway, guys, that will be all for now. Thank you so much. And until we see each other next time, have